Gonna start all over. We're gonna talk today about neuropathy and edema and its links to insulin. And it's really interesting to me that I had been planning to do this talk for the last 2 days. Technical difficulties prevented me from doing it, and then I was in a different call last night, all with a different with an energy product. And one of the ladies was talking about how she had so many people coming with edema and neuropathy. And I'm like, mind blown. Join my live in the morning. We're going to talk about how insulin resistance is causing that edema and neuropathy and how much easier it is to address it than most people think. And so if you think that you're stuck with edema and neuropathy, you're not. But before I get started, how many of you know someone or are someone who's suffering with fluid in your feet and hands, or numbness and tingling, or even shooting pain in your feet and hands? We want to talk about that this morning and explain how all that's happening. But does anybody, just say me, is anybody ever suffered with that? 3 years ago, I had such bad edema and neuropathy. I had to buy a different size shoes. I actually bought shoes that had rubber soles and elastic sides because my feet wouldn't fit into other shoes, or if they were solid shoes, they would be the fluid would be spilling out over the shoes at some point, and socks would cut off my circulation. So I had to buy diabetic foot socks. It was horrible. And then my feet hurt. So I didn't want to get up and walk or do much. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of these things. If you know somebody, invite them to this live, because we're going to explain how they can address their edema and neuropathy. Now, most of us know that it's a pretty common disorder with diabetes. And by the time you start to have that edema, the swelling, and the neuropathy, the nerve pain in your feet, you're starting to have some pretty serious complications that you don't want to go forward with. So we got to get it reversed, turned around right now. So here's what's happening. Neuropathy. Have any of you ever felt tingling or numbness in your hands or feet? Like just that like little weird electrical feeling in your hands and feet? Anybody? Just say numb if you've experienced that. I can't be the only one who had some edema and neuropathy. Anybody? Well, I'm sure that you know somebody who does have this. Oh yes, every day, Gracie, numb. Awesome. Pepper lady. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, there they come in. I knew that I couldn't be the only one. So let's talk a little bit. What I want to do this morning is we're going to talk about the neuropathy and the edema. We're going to talk about what's causing it. We're going to talk about some simple things you can do to get better from it. And then we're going to talk about the protocol that I did that helped me with mine. And it's not medications. You guys, I'm a little bit belligerent when people like, I got a text the other day from somebody who was like, we prescribe Mounjaro and Ozempic, and I'm like, get away from me. So I'm not a medication person. You need to understand that. All right. So let's start with neuropathy. Okay. It's basically damage to your nerves. Okay. That numbness and tingling is signaling you, and this is another warning sign from your body that you're having problems. Don't ignore it. That little bit of numbness and tingling isn't just going to go away, and it's not just a one-time thing. It will get worse if you don't address it, and then a lot of things could happen. Like I've seen people lose feet or have sores or have a lot of things. Now the edema, we're going to address some vascular issues, but with the neuropathy, what's really happening is that insulin resistance is causing the nerve damage in these ways. First, we're going to talk about oxidative stress. So insulin resistance leads to high blood sugar, which causes oxidative stress in our nerve cells. That's like rust forming on the delicate wiring of our nerves. Oxidative stress also happens because insulin, remember, if you've listened to any of my talks, insulin takes the excess energy that the cells don't want to take in because they're resistant and packs it in our fat cells. And the more fat we store in those fat cells, the more problems we have with oxidative stress. So the excess fat you're continually gaining is causing this. That's causing nerve damage, and it all started with insulin resistance. So then you have also some mitochondrial dysfunction. These things come up a lot with any of the issues we talk about. So our nerve cells, powerhouses, are mitochondria, okay? And They start to malfunction when insulin resistance sets in, and this leads to energy deficits in our nerves, causing them to misfire or stop working. So you're starting to understand where that little like electric signal is coming from. But then it also impairs the neurological or the neurotrophic signaling. Insulin actually acts as a growth factor for our nerves. And when our body, hold on a second, when our bodies become resistant, our nerves lose this vital support, meaning they start to degrade and deteriorate and fall away. So now we have impaired nerve signaling from oxidative stress, and the mitochondria is not working like they're supposed to, and your nerves are actually dying off in the midst of all of this insulin resistance. But then there's the microvascular damage. So the small little blood vessels. Insulin resistance affects these tiny blood vessels that supply our nerves. And poor blood flow means our nerves aren't getting the oxygen and nutrients they need to function properly. So, under all of this, how are our nerves ever supposed to give us the right signals at the right time? And maybe they're just misfiring all the time, causing that nerve pain. Is that Anybody find that interesting? When I first learned about neuropathy and insulin resistance, I was really blown away at all the ways that this insulin resistance really jacks with our systems. So understand that. Now, if you haven't experienced numbness or tingling in your hands or feet, and you start to, don't ignore them. They're early warning signs for insulin resistance diabetes. But let's talk about edema a little bit. So insulin can actually be leading to that puffiness, that tightness, that swelling in your hands and feet. I had some swelling in my knees, in my other joints, and then that can cause more stress in your joints. It's a big problem that we just don't want to have. But how is this happening? So, sodium retention is one, and I've talked about this with kidney function, I've talked about it with heart function, but sodium retention. So when our bodies become resistant to insulin, it changes our kidneys' ability to process sodium, and that insulin normally tells our kidneys to hold on to sodium, okay? But in insulin resistance, the signal goes into overdrive. And so now instead of holding on to appropriate amounts of sodium, the body's holding on to a lot of sodium. This is why with heart disease and vascular diseases, they tell you to watch your salt intake. It's not really about the salt, it's about the sugar. And if you get the sugar under control, then the salt's not really an issue. But right now, our body doesn't know what to do with salt. So you got to avoid it, right? How many of you have been told to avoid salt if you're experiencing swelling or if you're having heart problems? Put salt in the comments for me if anybody has ever been told that they got to regulate their salt, but cut back on that salt because it's the devil, right? Anybody ever been told or feel like you need to restrict your salt to avoid some of these problems? Um, I've heard a lot of my clients tell me that, they've been told that they can't have salt. When they get the insulin resistance under control, then they can have salt again. And so here's a clue with the salt though. I'm just going to go off the rails a little bit. Some doctors have said we'll know when it's the right amount of sodium because the salt will start to be bitter and you won't be able to take it. So you can salt your food to taste once you get your insulin resistance under control and enjoy your food again, not being bland. Because as long as it's not being too bitter, then it's not too much salt for your body at that point. But make sure you're getting your insulin resistance under control. So, sodium retention means excess fluid in the blood vessels, right? But then there's this problem of vascular permeability. So, insulin resistance can make our blood vessels leakier. So I want you to imagine tiny holes appearing in the walls of our blood vessels, allowing the fluid that's inside the blood vessels to escape into the surrounding tissues. And so that's why hands and feet, right? The fluid's not going to stay up top. It's going to kind of sink down to the bottom. And then with these leaky blood vessels, that fluid is just getting out into those tissues in your hands and feet and causing all of this painful swelling. So it's especially noticeable in your ankles and feet. Yeah, it is, but I want you to understand, Gracie, that This is so completely manageable without a ton of medications and a ton of complications, and we're gonna get to that part in just a minute. Somebody asked me last week about edema and neuropathy in a private chat I was having with them, and so I said, "Well, why don't I just do a talk on it?" So here we are, and I'm glad you're getting some value from it. So we have sodium retention, we have blood vessels that are leaky, but then we also have this altered protein balance. Why does protein matter? Okay. Protein um, helps block up some of those little holes and hold the fluid back into the blood vessels. But with insulin, when the insulin resistance occurs, it can lead to a decrease in that production of albumin, a protein that helps keep that fluid in our blood vessels. And so less albumin means more fluid seeping out. So now we have fluid retention by salt, we have leaky blood vessels, and then we have a protein malfunction that's meaning even more of that fluid is just getting out that was never supposed to get out. Now you have swollen hands, feet, and who knows where else. Like my knees were bad, my shoulders actually had some swelling in them. It was pretty bad. So yeah, Gracie, it's painful, and I hope that you're going to get some answers this morning. So the problem is that insulin resistance with edema and neuropathy can create a really vicious cycle. And you'll see this when I talk about insulin resistance with anything. There's always this bidirectional or this cyclic action between the things that I'm talking about and insulin. So with insulin resistance leading to that edema and fluid retention, the swelling, that extra swelling puts even more pressure on the nerves. So now nerves that were already struggling are getting more pressure and hurting even more and malfunctioning even more because of the edema. And then that neuropathy can affect your ability and want, like Gracie said, it's very painful. You might not even want to get up and walk because it just hurts you. If you don't have it, you don't understand how much it hurts to even be on your feet. So now that lack of activity, that lack of movement is actually increasing insulin resistance, fat retention, oxidative stress, and here we go. We have more swelling, we have more nerve pressure, we have more inability to move, and you're getting heavier, and you're swelling in your ankles and your feet and your hands, and the nerve pain is all getting worse. And it's really simple to turn it all around. Yeah. So I apologize to the couple of people who asked for the 8 Simple Steps ebook last week. There's been lots of technical challenges. I figured out a workaround, and then hopefully I will have that link back up on my page. So we're going to talk about 8 simple tips to get your insulin under control. And then I'm going to go over the protocol. But you want to do these things. I'm going to try and get through them because I always get off track. You want to get fiber in first. That's going to help slow down the blood glucose spike. Good morning, Candace. You want to prioritize protein. Protein is a building block. Protein also doesn't spike your insulin near as high as carbohydrates, and it keeps you fuller longer. So fiber first, prioritize protein. Don't fear fats. Eat healthy fats. And in the ebook that I have, I go over those fats that doctors like Bickman and Fong and Hyman have all recommended. So don't fear fats. Then you're going to limit your carbohydrates. What a lot of people get wrong is that they don't think of fruits and vegetables as carbohydrates, and they absolutely are. So if you're going to have carbohydrates, make sure they're from fruits and vegetables and not from the bagged boxed barcoded kind, because the bagged box barcoded kind are missing the fiber and allowing your blood sugar to spike even higher. Those natural fruits and vegetables can slow down in the glucose production in your body, but there's a lot to do with fruits and vegetables. So let's just stick on track. Limit your carbs. Try to eat natural carbs and not the bag box barcoded kinds. Now, we've added a few things. So that was 4 steps, all to do with food. Now, the next 4 steps all have to do with lifestyle. The next thing you want to do is do some time-based eating. If you understand, and I'll go over the fasting schedule in a minute, how insulin works and how long it takes for insulin to come down in your body once you've spiked it, you'll understand the need for intermittent fasting. But intermittent fasting is not scary, you guys. Most people are going 8 to 10 hours without eating. We're just asking you to extend it a couple of hours so that your body can actually do the work it's meant to. So do some time-based eating, and I'll explain all that in a minute. Then you want to move your body. So these are the first 6 that I always gave out, right? Move your body. I don't care if you're taking a walk for 10 minutes after you eat, but you need to combine some weight-bearing exercise with some movement, and a lot of times that walk after you eat needs to be 20 to 30 minutes when the sugar's actually hitting your system so that the muscles that you're working can actually utilize the glucose and the other cells can get relief. If you exercise too quickly, you might not get the best benefit. So, a lot of nutrition specialists are saying a half an hour after you eat, a 10-minute walk. You guys got to move your legs. It's the biggest place to get your muscles more insulin sensitive. Now, the bonus 2 things that I added to the ebook over the weekend because I think they're very important. I've seen it in my life. These bonus 2 lifestyle changes are limit your blue light. I don't know about you, but I'm in front of a computer all day, in front of a phone all day. I'm inside and not getting natural light, but I'm getting inundated with the blue light. So wear blue light blocking glasses, just limit your time under blue light. Why? It's stimulating cortisol, and the more cortisol in your system, the more insulin. And it's actually there's been studies showing that excess blue light is causing a problem with insulin resistance in many people. So they're now saying to add that to, and that's a simple thing, right? Blue light block. I mean, you guys can get blue light glasses and wear them even if you don't have glasses that you need to wear, and just help reduce that time. Stop scrolling all the time. That blue light is actually messing with your insulin sensitivity, which leads me to the last one. You want to shut off your blue lights and get some good sleep. So, about an hour before you go to bed, you need to put the phone away, get off the TV, maybe go back to reading a book, doing something so that your brain can shut down and you can get good sleep. Studies have shown that people who are only getting 5 hours of sleep are often more insulin resistant than people who are getting normal sleep. And getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep can really boost your insulin sensitivity, your brain function, and your ability to lose weight. So sleep is super important. So those are the 8 simple tips. I detail them all in the little ebook. If you want the ebook, message me after and let's get you the ebook. I will have a link up in my link tree hopefully this week as we get technical stuff fixed. So now with those 8 simple steps, that's a lot, right? I started out with like 5 and it's kind of actually grown to the 8 that I just mentioned because they're, to me, the simplest, most direct ways you can start addressing your insulin. Anybody can put those into play in their life, right? But here's the thing. When we talked about fiber first, in order for us to get the right amount of fiber in our diet, that would look like eating a bushel of broccoli before you go have that steak or the chicken or the salmon or whatever you're going to eat. And most of us just can't afford to buy a bushel of broccoli, cook it, and eat it every time we're going to eat to get in the fiber that we need. And it takes more than one kind of fiber to address insulin really appropriately. Every fiber from every food has a different action, in the system. So what we do now is I have 3 years ago I started and I didn't, you guys, when I started, I didn't really believe this was going to work, but I was desperate. I was literally dying. I couldn't walk. My joints were failing. My hair was falling out. My teeth and gums were bleeding. I was 50 pounds heavier. I was in pain all day, every day. My heart was failing. I was like a wreck and I just didn't know what else to do. So I saw this. And for me, I was just like, it's got a 90-day money back guarantee. I've got to try it because I want to be around for my grandkids. Bottom line. So the system is this. This is a multi-fiber complex with phytosterols and a bunch of other things in it that we're not going to really get into, but it helps reduce a blood sugar spike by up to 43% when taken before a high carbohydrate meal. Okay, so when we understand that, that's a pretty big reduction in glucose spike. When we have that kind of reduction in glucose spike, it means a pretty big reduction in insulin as well, because remember, insulin gets elicited when we have glucose in the system. So this is helping with that, and it's giving 7 different soluble and insoluble fibers to really affect that glucose reduction. This also helps you feel full. So you will notice that you'll eat less because you're now getting in the fiber you should have always been getting in. I'm freaked out that my shirt and my packet are the same color today. ADD squirrel. Okay, so This gives you that satiety, it gives you the blood sugar regulation, but what else is it doing? It's providing essential micronutrients that have been added to this to help with your metabolic health, but it also helps with lipid or cholesterol levels because of those phytosterols in here. So the other thing is this is feeding your good gut microbiome, um, and that is going to help the inflammation in your gut. So it's if you go to my profile and just tap on my profile up top when the white box comes up below, then tap on that. There's red light symbols underneath my picture and there's a link and it will take you right to where you can order. The eighth tip was get good sleep. And most of us are not getting enough. 5 to 6 hours is not enough. We need 7 to 9 according to emerging science, okay? Everyone needs 7 to 9. The people who say, I thrive on 5 or 6 hours, you don't know the health issues they're having behind the scenes. And one doctor said it so strongly that he said the percentage of people who can thrive on 5 to 6 hours of sleep and not have other issues, that percentage is zero. 5 to 6 hours of sleep is just not enough. So there's that. Now, that was the eighth tip, right? So now we started off with this fiber matrix. You just need to have one of these a day before the biggest meal that you have with carbohydrates to slow down that carbohydrate spike or the glucose spike and to get your blood sugars a little bit more normalized and your body more sensitive to the insulin. The second piece of it, and both of these, by the way, are gluten-free, they're halal, they're real food, but yet they're in the prescriber's digital reference because there's been enough studies and clinical research to show that this actually works. So this tea that I have right here, and I haven't been drinking this morning, and I should. Fat oxidation. This always gets confusing for me, and we'll talk about fat oxidation and oxidative stress in a second. But this increases fat oxidation. And what that means is it's helping you break down fat into a form that your body can use for fuel. Okay. Pretty simple. Those big words just means it's breaking down the fat you have stored into a form that we can use as energy and start, having that second source of fuel because our body really is fueled by sugar or fat. And currently, almost all of us are running off of sugar, and that's why we're getting sick. We need to be able to, in our bodies, we're built to switch from sugar to fat. And most of us have lost that ability because we're only fueling with sugar. And good morning, Jen, if you're still here. So now let's talk about the rest of this. So it increases that fat oxidation, which means it's getting you to burn more fat, especially when you're drinking this in a fasted state, which I'm now fasted for 12 hours right now. And then this supports glucose metabolism. There's been a lot of studies that show yerba mate can improve glucose levels and improve insulin signaling. This is a highly concentrated form, so it's like I don't want to use the word steroids because that's a negative connotation, or miracle grow because like what am I supposed to say? But this is like regular yerba mate on steroids, so it's going to help with that oxidation of the fat even more. It's going to get the glucose levels supported and leveled out even more, and improves your insulin signaling, by the way, as well. This tea also provides antioxidants, anti-inflammatories, and anti-cancer components, all naturally occurring in this tea. It's all natural. It's not a medication that we've thrown a bunch of stuff in. So it's tea, stevia, and a little bit of flavoring. But it's been concentrated so high that some of the main components in it are 375 times higher than any standard yerba mate. And that's why this tea is working so well. One of the more current things that's being talked about is how this tea produces GLP-1. And I think many of you have heard about GLP-1s. You've heard about Mounjaro, tirzepatide, all of those. Those are synthetic forms of GLP-1, a hormone that's actually improving some insulin signaling or improving some insulin production from the pancreas, but it's also creating some satiety in your gut. The problem with the synthetic forms is that satiety is being caused, and I have a video, Dr. Bickman talking about this, and I'll get that up today. But that satiety goes so far that it's actually why it's happening is it's freezing up your intestines and not allowing them to contract and move waste along. So now they're getting nasty burps. They're getting this paralysis in the gut and all this rotting food sitting in their stomach. That level of GLP-1, none of us really need. I think we could agree, but that's what they're getting when they're doing the shots once a week. This is helping your body produce GLP-1, which should ebb and flow. With the medications, it doesn't ebb and flow. It's just constant. It's like leaving your light switch on all day, every day, all the time, and expecting you to ever get rest. But this is eliciting GLP-1 naturally, and your body's able to put out GLP-1 when it needs it, not just because it was injected, okay? So there's that. It's increased the GLP-1 in people up to 70% naturally, your own GLP-1. So when we combine those two products, the tea in the morning, and then I have another tea in the afternoon when my energy starts to go down, and when I start to feel any hunger, it's whenever I'm ready for the second tea. So 2 teas a day and 1 fiber a day is all that it is. It helps regulate your insulin levels. It's been proven to increase insulin sensitivity, reducing A1C, reducing lipids, and what was the other one? I lost it. It doesn't matter. It's been proven that it works, and there's science behind it. There's clinical studies behind it. So there's that. Anyway, if you're interested in the protocol that's helping people get rid of insulin resistance and all of these things, just reach out to me, use the link. But I want to say this before I get off. If you know, and I know we all like to go Google stuff and figure it out, make sure that what we're doing is right. So, do your research. But in my link, there's a website that talks about the tea, that talks about the fiber, that talks about the two of them combined, that gives you the nutritional panels, all of that stuff. So you can do a little research on your own there. But if you go to Amazon, eBay, Walmart to buy, it's not supported by the 90-day money-back guarantee or the low price guarantee or any of that stuff. You're going to end up spending $100 more and probably get expired or pirated product. If you want coaching and the guarantees, you got to use the link of somebody like me who's actually connected to the company, and it ships direct from the company. It's not like I'm housing this stuff and you're waiting for me to get my rear to the post office, because that never happens. The company actually ships it directly, so you know that it's been handled and is reputable the whole way through. Gracie, if you ever have more questions, let me know. And I'll be back on tomorrow talking about, there was something that I just saw, sleep apnea. I think I want to talk about sleep apnea tomorrow. Does anybody else want to hear about sleep apnea tomorrow and how highly it's linked to insulin resistance? Or is there something else that's on that list besides edema and neuropathy that you guys would love to hear more about? Sleep apnea. Perfect. I love, you know what? I was waking up 60 times an hour with sleep apnea before the system, and now I sleep through the night. So let's do it. We'll talk about sleep apnea tomorrow. And in the meantime, you guys, thanks for joining me. Thanks for sitting out and listening. Normally I am on at 8:30 to 9 in the morning. I'm really trying to get it under control to be back at 8:30. Tanya May, can we talk about migraines, headaches, all of that neurological stuff on Friday? Can we do that? So we'll do sleep apnea tomorrow, and I'll go more into depth on what's happening. By the way, some of the stuff that I talked about with the neuropathy and the nerve function problems is going on in the brain, and energy not getting to the brain, and that's causing migraines. But we'll dive deep into migraines Friday, okay? All right, you guys, thanks for hanging out. I love that you ask questions. I love that you comment, and let's just get you guys understanding what's really happening, and that you guys are not deficient in medications. There's time and place for medications. Pain. When I broke my leg, thank gosh for pain medications. When I was septic in 2 hours from death, I was, thank God for antibiotics, right? Those are different situations. In our day-to-day life, we don't need to have fistfuls of medications to make us healthy. It's not working for most of us, so let's figure out what does. All right. Pepper Lady, thank you. We will see you guys all tomorrow. Sleep apnea tomorrow, migraines, headaches, anxiety, depression even on Friday, okay? Good morning, Liddy Lou, and we'll see you guys all tomorrow morning. Around 8:30 to 9. I'm really trying to get it back to 8:30, but there's been so many technical difficulties. That's why I was on late. All right, we'll see you guys tomorrow.